online broadcast network, AFTERBUZZ TV. Over 20 million weekly downloads in over 150 countries, and your number one source for after-show entertainment. AFTERBUZZ TV, the destination for TV superfans. Producing aftershows for over 300 of your favorite TV shows, interviewing celebrities and showrunners, and bringing you behind-the-scenes exclusives. All thanks to E! Entertainment's Maria Menounos, producer Kevin Undergaro, and internet leader Akamai. Now, let the buzz begin!
Yeah, feel it. Hey AfterBuzzers, and welcome to the first after show for HBO's The Jinx, the 6-episode documentary series about, as the subtitle says, the life and deaths of Robert Durst. We've got 6 episodes to cover, but tonight we're going to start with episode 1 and 2, Body in the Bay and Poor Little Rich Boy. But before we dive into all that, I want to make sure all of you out there are subscribed to us on YouTube, youtube.com/AfterBuzzTV. You can also catch all of our podcasts on iTunes and SoundCloud as well. So download, subscribe, rate us, follow along, you name it. I'm Lauren Salaun, and you can find me on Twitter at Lauren Salaun, and I'm joined tonight by Stef Z. Stef, how's it going?
It's going good. I don't know how I feel about this whole Jinx thing.
So many feelings.
So many feelings. I think I'm actually drinking the Kool-Aid. But I'm Stef Z. You guys can tweet me at IAMSTEFZ. I'll happily tweet you back. Want to know your thoughts, feelings?
Yeah, seriously. Let us know what you guys think, because as you know, if you're keeping up with things, this HBO series just concluded this past Sunday, so last week, and there's real life stuff going on with the case. So it is a very interesting
hot topic.
Yeah, hot topic, very interesting what's going on with this, and really cool to be able to, dive into it like this. I mean,
yeah, it's really exciting, and it's kind of cool because we know what's happening, and we'll try and keep it not spoiler. Like, in case you're watching this for the first time and you don't know, we're not gonna tell you everything in the end, but you've probably heard in the news so that you know. So It's a very interesting after show for us.
Yeah, exactly. We'll keep our discussion to episodes 1 and 2, whatever we're covering during the week, but definitely going to throw what's going on in the news and the real events that have taken place into the mix. Which, why don't we talk about the real thing? So, The Jinx was written by Andrew Jarecki, Marc Smerling, and Zachary Stuart-Pontier. It was directed by Jarecki, who also directed the movie All Good Things, which came out in 2010 with Ryan Gosling and Kirsten Dunst. And that movie was inspired by and based on the events of Robert Durst's life as well. So we've got Jarecki doing this movie, based on true events, which, fictional movie based on true events, and then also this documentary series. So there's a lot of different
things. I would love to interview him.
Right? Hey,
Andrew, come on to our show. We want to talk to you. But yeah, it's just crazy. I don't think he ever thought that this would happen.
Right?
Could you imagine that you want to make this documentary about this story that you don't know is true? You have your own, because I feel like when situations like this arise in the news or on TV, everyone kind of has their own theory. Oh, yeah. Theories might be very similar, but you have your own personal experiences that you tie to theories. So that's what this filmmaker did. Then to eventually get a call from the man himself, Robert Durst, to kind of be like, you're the only one that's kind of legit that I'll talk to.
Yeah, I thought that was insane watching that. He just made the movie, and what he says in, I think, episode 1 or 2 actually, he goes, I wanted to make a movie that Durst would watch and have an emotional reaction to, and then Durst ends up calling him and is like, oh, I want you to interview me.
Yeah.
Get my story out there, which seemed so bizarre. I mean, I don't know why he did that.
I know, and I feel like, as much as I don't think this man has a conscience, maybe I do think he does, I don't know, but I feel that somewhere deep inside him, he needed to voice, he needed to say something.
Yeah, as we have seen with kind of his own words too, Durst's own words, he's kind of a control freak to a certain extent.
Yes.
Like with his relationship with his wife, Kathy, very much the dominant one and kind of called all the shots, which he said. So, I think seeing the public's reaction or, how people might take it from the movie or the news, he wanted to tell his own story and, used to being able to get his way and do whatever he wants, I guess. But yeah, for those of you who don't totally know or aren't completely up to speed, Robert Durst, he's 71 years old at this point, and he is a member of one of the wealthiest New York real estate families like ever, very powerful, rich real estate family. And he's been in the news related to a string of murders or deaths, I guess, since the early 80s. So in 1982, his wife Kathy disappeared, and she's presumed to have been murdered by him, is kind of the consensus. But since no body was ever found, there's no official death. She could still just be a missing person or could be alive somewhere. Highly unlikely, in my opinion. But
yeah, unlikely, but possible.
Possible. That's the thing. It's possible.
And if I was her,
I don't, with somebody that powerful and that she's that scared of, I don't know if you'd want to come forward and be like, no, I'm alive, I'm okay, everyone.
I don't know that I would want to come forward, but unless her friends, because we see in episode 2 that her friends do a pretty extensive search. They almost make their own case out of it. So I might tell some. I don't know if I would disconnect with I don't know if I would be in the correct mind frame to disconnect and cut
from your parents,
all my
from
ties.
your family. No, I don't think so.
Unless they're all just lying.
Yeah, no, she's dead.
I think she's dead.
For sure, she's dead.
I don't want to think she's dead.
I know.
want to find her.
Let's go.
Kathy, where are you?
And then in 2000, who he calls his best friend, his best friend at the time, writer Susan Berman, she was killed execution style in her house in Beverly Hills. And that is actually, he was just arrested last week, I think on the 15th. He was arrested and charged with her murder. So that's what's going on in the news right now. They finally got some sort of new evidence that connects him with her murder that prompted an arrest.
I think I could be totally wrong here. And it's a real big spoiler, should I not?
I mean, I don't know.
I feel like the biggest thing that's happening is that they discovered something from this documentary as the new evidence to why they think. I feel like, I don't want to tell the exact details, but what I've read was he was still mic'd when he went to the restroom.
Right.
So isn't that what kind of led
so in the conclusion, there's a big kind of spoiler thing, which, to be honest, could be conclusive, but it could also be him just running through things verbally out loud. It may not say anything,
right?
But it's not like they just finished filming this last week and then they arrested him. So actually, he was arrested on the 14th. The finale was on the 15th for the show, and his lawyers say that they timed the arrest to coincide with the finale of the show to raise a bunch of publicity around it, to really have this big publicity parade, essentially. So that's what his lawyers are claiming. They, maybe they had this evidence, but they waited to go after him.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's insane. If you have the evidence, you're not going to wait to time it with a freaking TV show.
Well, true. But I also, and then that actually makes me believe that he knew what he was saying and it was true. If they're going to go through that extent, then whatever he said when he was mic'd, he was aware of saying it. So,
right.
But also, I feel like, I don't know what happens when you do a documentary with legalities. So if I'm interviewing you and I have to sign a confidentiality agreement until something airs, it's almost like, or is it or is it not? I don't know if you guys out there know. Is it kind of like a lawyer, client privilege?
Well, because
go ahead.
Well, his lawyers obviously approved of him to do the show and get questioned and stuff and to have it air. So I don't know.
They had to see it before it got aired. I'm sure there was some stipulation.
Yeah, the thing with it, I don't know if maybe he signs a release in the beginning that's whatever you guys end up filming, good, run with it, or if they did watch it at the end and have to approve it, because that ends up being really fishy if they had to watch it had sign-off privileges at the end to be like, yep, looks good. Because if it was really incriminating for him, they wouldn't say, yeah, looks good, air it. So part of me feels like maybe there was some agreement that like whatever comes of these sessions is legitimate and can be used.
Yeah, I would think that, if you have evidence to a murder, I would think Andrew Jarecki, or I don't know if I'm saying his name right, would somewhat have to call the police and say, I'm doing this interview and this is what happened. What am I supposed to do?
Yeah,
the whole situation seems a little bit confusing.
I would think how that works. I don't know legitimately how it works, but I would think that during the filming process, if something came up, they had to be very much in communication with the police, I would think, because there's no way they like air it on TV and they're like, surprise, there you go, new evidence, you saw it on HBO. So I feel like they must be communicating with the police because on the other hand, Jarecki did say like he wanted to find truth out about this, and if the truth could potentially be that Durst did in fact kill these people, and if he's got Jarecki as like a good filmmaker and stuff, and doing this kind of investigative documentary series, he has to be prepared if he does find something that could be helpful for the investigations to then know who he should talk to and when he needs to do that, because I would think it's very possible that he could have uncovered something that helps the case. So I would think he's in communication with people about that for sure.
Because I feel like this is the first of this style in which the accused is free and they're doing a story about this. I don't know another situation where it's it's still up in the air of what might happen to the accused, and they're doing this true story, because it could be fabricated for television to make a better show, but there's so many fine lines to walk with this. And I feel like Andrew Jarecki, he made a lot of good choices. There are a lot of decisions in making this, and from everything that I've seen so far, the choices were all solid choices to be truthful and also be entertaining.
Right, it's entertaining and feels very truthful and not like sensationalized in any way. I feel like they did an incredible job of unveiling a lot and keeping some mystery, but also being straightforward about what's going on. And so then the third murder that he is linked to is the in 2001, he was acquitted of murdering his friend in Galveston, Texas, his neighbor Morris Black. So he admitted to dismembering him, so cutting off his legs, arms, head, and then putting them in trash bags and throwing him into Galveston Bay, but claims that he killed him in self-defense, that they were fighting over a gun and it discharged, and that's how he died. And the jury believed it, so he was acquitted, which is unbelievable. But at the same time, I will say, like, when it's a one-on-one situation like that and the other person dies and you claim self-defense, it's going to be kind of hard to take anyone else's word for it, Yeah,
but it's self-defense. I would think, and I know that this is not the thought process of somebody like Robert Durst, I would think that if me and you got into a fight and you were going after a gun, and instead I took the gun from you and shot and killed you in self-defense, I think once I realized you were dead, my next move would be call the police.
Right, you probably wouldn't chop my body up and throw it into
remember that saw that I bought at the hardware store, that bow saw? Let me go get that.
Yeah.
And let me cut you up.
Yeah.
Because that in itself, I get that maybe somebody can, I'm trying to put myself into like a crazy place, and I get that maybe he could be so pissed that you would try, or Morris would try and hurt me, so I'm gonna cut you up and make you, like, shooting you is too easy for you. But that's crazy talk.
Yeah, well, and I think, which we probably will see later in other episodes, he had been so under the microscope for Kathy's disappearance, for his wife's disappearance in the 80s, and it brought so much like negative attention to his family, which was a very, like I said, prominent family in New York, that he wanted to just like make it disappear, I guess, and was terrified or something. But that's how actually episode 1 opens up, with finding the body parts floating in the bay. A poor teenage kid found it. Oh, yeah. And that one detective is like, well, I had to stick my hand into his chest plate and grab his breastbone and pull out the torso. I can't I cannot even imagine.
You know what I can't imagine? I mean, I guess I would... What does that look like?
A torso with...
Yeah, just a torso,
like
but that's been... Right, but that's just been in the water for so long.
Right.
How do you know? Torso.
Yeah, they showed pictures of the hands after they had pulled them out.
I saw that.
And they didn't, I mean, aside from a few of the fingers looking a little mangled up, they were pretty intact, like not too water bloated, so...
Yeah, and for you guys out there that are considering watching the show or hearing this and haven't watched the show, just be warned, some of the pictures are a little graphic.
Yeah.
You legit see cut leg, flesh. Whew.
Yep. Yeah, pretty graphic. And I mean, the whole subject matter, like in general, is pretty disturbing. And, you know, watching Durst talk about all this stuff on camera is just very creepy. It's creepy, but the thing that's... this is crazy. The thing that... Not that it scares me, but the thing that gets me the most is, like I was saying earlier, it's almost like I'm drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit. It's almost like I'm hearing him saying some things and I'm thinking that could be logical, his thought process. He's really smart, right? And that's something that I think it's interesting, because there are those moments watching him speak that you're like, oh, that's legitimate, and he actually sounds very normal when he's saying that, or, you know, oh, I get that, like, normal way of thinking about it, you know. And times when you can tell that he is definitely a very intelligent man, but then there are also very stupid things like him driving around in his car, like goes to pick up the way they caught him is they went to the eyeglass store where he had like a receipt to go pick up his glasses, and they find him in the back of his car. He's got the saw and like all the receipts and stuff. So things like that are just really dumb slip-ups, you know, where I would think like this really smart man who is clearly trying to cover his tracks by chopping up the body in the first place, you know, why does he still have the freaking saw with him? Come on.
Yeah, I feel as though there's a statistic that a criminal usually makes 8 mistakes or 10 mistakes or so. There's some number. Yeah, we'll look it up for you guys next week. Or if you guys know, feel free to, you know, comment and let us know. But yeah, I'm pretty sure there's some statistic that every criminal makes X amount of mistakes, and that's usually how they're found. And it's not the same mistakes,
right?
You know, but it's very interesting that the saw was there.
Yeah, so I found that curious, and I did think so. Obviously, they found the receipt for the hardware store for the drop cloth, paring knives, bow saw, all that stuff that he used to chop up the body, and I was curious, which I'm assuming they, you know, clearly that stuff was purchased after his death, but the timing of that, you know, I would think that I wanted them to kind of go into that a little bit more, the timing of that, because that could have concluded, obviously, if it was premeditated or not, which the court case determined that it wasn't, you know, that it was in self-defense. But I have that question, I guess, when were those things purchased?
Yeah, they didn't really say.
Yeah. But
that's a good question, because was the body just dead in his house and he went calmly to the hardware store and was like, let me buy a knife?
Yeah, because they say that the blood was going into the hallway, so into the common area, and then into apartment number 2. So in this apartment building, so the reason they ended up finding, which is another mistake I'm remembering now. So in one of the bags that Durst stuffed the body in was a piece of a newspaper that had the mailing address on it. So they go to the building that ends up being Morris's and Durst's apartment building where they're living, where Durst was living disguised as a mute woman, like full-on dress, wig, all that stuff, not speaking.
The name was Dorothy Siner, I think, and
Dorothy
that was one
Siner.
of his high school friends.
Yeah, so even more suspicious.
Where's Dorothy Siner these days?
Right? Dorothy, what are you up to?
Yeah.
And so that's super suspicious, and so just stuff like that, like not cleaning out not cleaning out the trash and making sure nothing's going to link it back. Like stupid mistakes that I feel like if you're really trying to hide it, that you're going to cover up.
Well, I feel like some of the psyche, and again, I'm just assuming this, that some of the psyche in someone that actually might be able to do these things is that almost they're above the law. And what I mean by that is that they can't fathom getting caught.
Right.
So some of those little
very
mistakes.
narcissistic, yeah.
Yeah, some of those little mistakes. I mean, because, I believe it was the first episode, we talk about, I know I'm jumping a little bit here,
That's
but
okay.
we talk about, how he comes from one of the wealthiest families in New York City. But yet he also gets picked up because he goes and steals a hoagie.
Yeah.
But he's got $30,000 or $38,000 in cash in the car.
his car and $600 in his pocket. So stuff like that.
To him it just doesn't occur that the laws apply to him or something.
And hearing him talk about that, because that was in episode 1. He skipped bail for his arraignment hearing for Morris Black's death and goes up to Pennsylvania and steals a sandwich when he's got all that money, which to me, I'm like, and I'm sure everyone involved in the case, why did he do that? Did he want to get caught? Because that seems like something, if you've got the money in your pocket, you don't do that when you're trying to run away anyway. So it's just so bizarre.
The only thing that I could think of is that he didn't want to be seen and he didn't want to make eye contact with people. So he was like, I'm just going to grab the sandwich and I'm out of here.
Yeah, and at one point he says, I wanted to see if I could do it, I guess.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, weirdo. Maybe not when you're wanted for murder, if you'd want to stay hidden.
Yeah.
But again, what you're saying, where he feels like he's above the law, and not to stereotype people with money or anything like that, but coming from a family that is that powerful and has that much money, he, I'm sure, is used to getting a lot of things his way, if not because of the power, but maybe for paying for them or buying people off, whatever,
Or like we see, I believe in the first episode, that if he does get in trouble, he has the funds to be bailed out.
Exactly. Oh, yeah. When they're like, oh, well, $250,000, that's going to be bail. And he's like, do you have that? And he's like, oh, not on me.
Yeah. But because to him, it's not. It's exactly what it is. That's like face value for him. For him, I don't have that on me because $250,000 for him is like $50 for one of us, So it's like it doesn't occur to him that that's a lot of money, or it doesn't occur that that's a high consequence versus a low consequence, because to him, $250,000, $500,000, $100,000, it's all attainable, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, living in a very different world and playing by different rules, and he's pushing the boundaries of that. What did you think about the interview with his current wife, Deborah?
I am from New York, so I thought this woman was New York to the T.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, she was so just blunt and...
Yeah, she's like, what? I was in Long Island. I don't know what the hell he was doing.
Yeah, she was...
in Galveston. I don't know what Galveston is.
She was so over it in a sense.
Yeah.
And she wasn't sticking up for him. She wasn't throwing him under the bus. She wasn't giving information, but she wasn't withholding information. Right. She was just kind of there.
Yeah.
It was like a wall almost.
I thought it was so bizarre. For one, that somebody married him anyway with all the stuff that he's been involved in. But hey,
especially his ex-wife is like, people out there, if you are in love with somebody and the previous person they were with has been missing, never found, come on. That's a big red flag. And a red flag doesn't mean the carnival's
even if
coming.
they have $1 billion.
See that? I don't know, but I feel like his wife it didn't seem like she was the...
Well, she didn't even remember their wedding date when they're like, when were you married? And she's like,
But it didn't seem like she was the materialistic type that was using him for money. She looked like the New Yorker that was just like, what's up?
No, I have a very strong feeling, and who knows if this will ever be revealed, or it could be a mystery. I feel like it's a very intentional that she is married to him. I feel like she's his like crime beard in a sense, like that she knows something a lot more than she's telling.
She killed Kathy? Is that what you think?
No.
Okay.
But I think there's very clearly some sort of arrangement between the two of them, and she knows more, and she's like getting paid to keep quiet. And because with spousal privilege, so if you're married to somebody, they cannot testify against you in court, I believe, to a certain extent.
I believe that's true.
If she knows something more about what's gone on with either Morris Black's death or with Kathy's disappearance, being married means she can't testify against him. And so I feel like there's something, something else there that because they're like living separate lives too. Like, how often was he in Galveston? And she's like, oh, I didn't know where he was going. Like, what was he saying he was doing? And then when Susan Berman was murdered, we find out that was around Christmas time, and they weren't together, and that was their first Christmas together. So just weird stuff,
Right, yeah, they weren't a happily married couple.
So who knows? I feel like it's
such
an arrangement, or
yeah, no, I'm with you on that.
A very intentional and strategic marriage.
It felt very weird. The phone call, we hear him calling her for the $250,000. Mm-hmm. You had to be there in the morning. It was very. It wasn't
transactional.
Empathetic. Yeah, there was no feeling there. Right. It was like, okay, you got yourself in trouble. You need this. Okay. And she was giving him the money, even though it was probably his money.
Right. So. Yeah, and even more when they're talking, and she's talking about, like, the lawyers and stuff, and even about his brother, Douglas. She's like, oh, Douglas screwed you out of your inheritance, and he's to blame for everything bad that's in your life because you didn't get to, run the company, all this stuff. There's definitely some, like, bitterness there, and she was very involved, like, in, telling him to fire his previous lawyer because it was Douglas had hired him, and so it just, which is different. Those are just like 3 phone calls out of how many calls they had while he was in prison.
But it's also different from what we see in the relationship with Kathy, that he so much seems like he's in control of and calls the shots. Like, she is calling some of the shots and saying, you need to fire this one. Yes, he's meeting her halfway in the middle, and then, eventually we see he gets 2 lawyers, the one he wanted and the one she wanted. But yeah, I definitely think
for $1.8 million.
Yeah.
Fine, we'll get both.
Chump change. But I definitely think there is some sort of... It did kind of irk me, that conversation where she was talking about the brother and he stole the inheritance. It's, when he called and said he was in jail for murder, there was no expression. And then, I would think if I called my spouse and said that I was accused of murder, they wouldn't be like, oh, your brother screwed you out of your money. Yeah. There would be some empathy or it was almost like, oh, murder again. Okay, I'll get the money.
Damn it,
so matter
Bobby,
of fact. That's how she was.
Robert,
she was so matter of fact.
Getting in trouble again. Yeah. Very matter of fact. And I think it's interesting to see those clips with Douglas too, with his brother, and saying, he didn't, he was afraid of Robert and didn't, ended up hiring a bodyguard and, like, to protect him and his family, because once he skipped bail, that he was worried he was going to come after him, and that, Robert had threatened to kill him and stuff. And I love how glib Robert is when they're like, so why would Douglas be afraid of you? And he's like, I don't know, he's a pussy. I'm like, I know. This guy.
It was kind of amazing when he said that.
Yeah, I'm like, this guy's not taking this seriously. But he was, but he wasn't. He was answering all the questions just how he felt, with a straight face. I don't know, man. I don't know what I believe. I know. There's a lot there, because in those moments, when he's like, why would your brother, when they're asking him, why would he be afraid of you? And he seems very like, oh, I have no idea. Those pieces do seem believable. He says everything so, like, deadpan, it's all the same expression and all the same tone that...
And some of it is a little bit logical. Mm-hmm. Some of it's delusional. Got it. But some of it is a little bit logical. So you're like, well, maybe.
Right. Exactly. I know. That's kind of terrifying.
Yeah.
And so episode 1 ends with talking about All Good Things, Jarecki's, fictional but based on reality movie. And he, like I said in the beginning, wanted to make a movie that Durst would have an emotional reaction to, and then Durst calls them. I I still think it's so bizarre that he offered, approached them about doing the interview. And that's how episode 2, Poor Little Rich Boy, opens up with, him saying he wanted to present his story and his version that the media had not been showing. And I think that reasoning is totally fair.
Right.
If you're getting slaughtered in the media, and we all know how much the media can shape public opinion, even when it's not accurate, when they take one little crumb and run with it and get everyone to think one way when maybe later evidence comes out to say something completely different. Media can set something on fire from just a spark. And so I get that he wants to share his side and have somebody who is sympathetic in a sense to his story. Which have you watched All Good Things?
No, I haven't.
Okay, watch it. Here's the thing. I'm sorry, but I don't think it's that great of a movie. But when you watch it knowing all of this, because the first time I had watched it, I didn't know about the Durst case. It was like a year ago or something when I watched it. And then I watched it again in the past week, and it's very interesting to watch knowing what's going on in real life and what did actually happen. Very interesting. But I wouldn't necessarily say that it paints him in all that sympathetic of a light. I think the movie does kind of position Durst's character in the movie as the killer. So I don't know. I thought it was an interesting choice, and why he reached out to Jarecki to do that is still very curious to me.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I say somewhere deep down inside of him, there's a conscience.
Yeah.
That I feel like he wanted someone. I mean, you got to think about this guy. This guy, and he even said it. He had all the money in the world. He couldn't spend the money, and he was so sad. So he's somewhere looking for that validation, or I don't know if validation is a word, but he's looking for something to fill that void,
some sort of emptiness.
So he could see this movie and be like, this. Jarecki actually cares about me, or could feel a care.
Yeah.
There's a weird thing that happens, and that's probably, one of the reasons why he calls, because he finally felt some weird sense of belonging, or some space where he was validated to be something, because he felt so hopeless and you have to feel that way.
Totally get that. And we end up in episode 2 learning a lot more about his life, his early childhood and stuff. And this next thing, so his dad, when he is 7 years old, I believe. Yeah, 7 years old, his dad gets him out of bed. He's the oldest of 4 kids, and gets him out of bed and brings him to the windows to see his mom standing on the roof of their big fancy house, waves to her, and then okay, back to bed. And then she commits suicide, jumps off the roof. They claim she fell, whatever. No, jumped off the roof, committed suicide. And as I'm watching that, I felt like that was such a sadistic thing for his father to do. On the one hand, I get him as a father, Seymour Durst, wanting his son to have one last moment maybe with your mother, but you don't do that. I mean, I don't completely, but maybe, I don't know. These guys are so bizarre. Why do you do that? I feel like it's such a twisted thing to do.
Number one, again, if my spouse was on the roof,
wouldn't you be trying to get her?
Jump off it, I would call the police.
Yeah, that's what I'm like. Why is he getting the kids out to have their final goodbye and not going out on the roof to try and get her or talk her down? It just seems so weird. So weird, that situation.
Do you think that's true, though? Do you think that's how it happened? I guess.
So I think that Robert had said that he watched his mom jump off. But I think that part later, Douglas, the other brother, said was not true. I think he did, in fact, bring him out to see her standing there, but he didn't see her fully, jump off or fall off. But
who does that to their kid?
Did Seymour maybe think? Did he maybe think if she sees her son, she'll come off the roof or something. Like, that's like the only way I can really think it.
But then you communicate it. You say, honey,
you
look
don't
at
just,
our boy here. You can't do this.
You don't just like wave to mommy.
And it wasn't even like mommy was looking. It didn't look like that. Was just so bizarre. And the fact that that's all we see of the dad so far, and we know that dad is part of building this empire and then giving this empire maybe to the other brother, so to speak, and that's all we see of their interaction.
Yeah.
That to me is, of course this kid's gonna
have some issues later in life.
Yeah, and but not even that. There's got to be something genetically in this kid, because look at the father that he came from that would even do something like that.
Yeah.
Whew.
It's, so that, so awful. Like, I can't even imagine why you would do that. But then we learn a bit about Kathy and Bob's relationship and how he was like such a Prince Charming and all this stuff. But, that he also said most people didn't get along with him. And there was clear tension between Kathy's family and Bob. He never wanted to really interact with them. Always felt like, I think he even quotes himself saying like, Bob is forced to spend time with the average American family and really does not view them as equals in any way.
Which is really weird, because if you notice, a lot of times he talks about himself in third person.
Yeah.
Which is kind of creepy.
Yeah.
He's not like, well, I didn't really want to go over there because I felt like I didn't have a lot of stuff in common with these people. It was Bob felt like he had to go have dinner with the average American family and have conversation. It's like, where are you? Like, connect here.
Yeah. So he just... really weird. And part of like their relationship seems, the early parts of it, I guess, before like all the physical and emotional and verbal abuse was going on, they moved to Vermont and opened a health food store, and they like had this simple life that they really liked. And he even says, he didn't want to get into the family business, but he felt like, his dad kind of said he should do that, and he felt like it was his family duty to do that. So they moved back to the city, and he didn't want to. And not to obviously say that's like a reason for, make the most of your situation, buddy. But it does seem like part of me wonders like, if they had just stayed there, like, would they have had a happy life if they had stayed with their little health food store? I
mean, clearly his family... for somebody like this, I don't know. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff about mental health that, neither one of us are, know that much about. We're not psychiatrists or psychologists. But what I'm trying to say is that I'm sure from his childhood and his situation, there is a lot of harm to his mental stability. Mm-hmm. So going back there could have tipped him over if he felt that he was strong enough to get out of this situation and then was pulled back into it by this person that he didn't want to do for, because this person he knows subconsciously is the one that kind of screwed him up and did things like have him go watch his mom commit suicide. I could see how that really could screw with you, though.
Yeah. Totally. And I think one of the things, like you're saying, him getting kind of thrown back into the city, essentially, in the first episode, one of the detectives says, I don't think he kills for the thrill of it, and I don't think he takes pleasure in it, but if you back him into a corner and threaten his freedom, he'll kill you. And so I thought that, like, obviously we don't have all the facts, but like that seemed to sum it up so well, I think. And I think the move to New York is like this kind of the end of the life that he wanted for himself. Right. And so in New York, he ends up working for the family business, didn't want to do that, and ends up becoming essentially very much more controlling and domineering and abusive to Kathy. And on the night of her disappearance, they had been arguing and stuff, and the doorman for their apartment he said that he saw her go in, and then she called the next day to say she wasn't going to medical school. And Bob even claimed that he put her on the train to go back to the city and everything like that, but then she's never heard of again, and told one of her friends, if anything ever happens to me, you need to look into it, because I'm terrified of Bob, essentially. I think he'll kill me. That's pretty much what she said, which then we see later that her friends, when she went missing, they start investigating everything and going through his trash, and they find all sorts of stuff, like all of her stuff that he's getting rid of. Like, he knows she's not coming back, which that thing, I didn't really go too far with that, because if he thought she left him, if we're playing devil's advocate, if she left him, maybe that's his way of coping. Just get rid of all her stuff. Get over it, sort of thing. Not really, it's suspicious, but doesn't say a whole lot. But they did find that note with all the list of things that you would need to dispose of a body and the places where you would hide it, essentially.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, very suspicious. I also thought that it was odd that when Kathy went missing, the Durst family, like Seymour Durst, the father, that he didn't decline to interview and decline to really help with finding her. They've got all these resources. They have connections with like politicians and important people in New York, tons of money. You would think that they would like put out all the stops to try and find their son's missing wife, and they did nothing.
Yeah. Which leads me to believe that either the father knew. I feel like they didn't like Kathy. The family didn't like or approve of Kathy. But I would think, too, and this is so crazy for me to even say, but I'm thinking it, so I'm going to say it. I would think if I had that much money and I was that crazy, that I would hire someone to do my dirty work.
Agreed.
So I don't understand. I mean, so there is some
but
sort
maybe
of
he
thrill.
did. Is the thing?
I don't know.
Since we don't know where Kathy is, and they didn't find a body. Whoever did that did a damn good job of getting rid of her.
There's a little part of me that thinks that she's somewhere, and I don't know why. Because if I was in a terrible relationship and I was gonna get out, and I was thinking of all my tracks to be retraced, I would definitely, the day before I'm leaving, tell somebody, if you don't see me, it's because of XYZ.
Right. I think he.
Like, you think that's just coincidence that the night before she said, if you don't see me, it's because he did something? That's the only thing.
She said she's scared of him, yeah.
Yeah, that's the only thing that kind of flashes for me, is that if I was in a situation where I was scared of somebody or I wanted to leave,
it's a good way to frame them, kind of,
It's a good way to be like, yo, if you don't see me tomorrow, it's because whatever. Yeah. And then when you don't see me, you're like, oh my God, she said it's because whatever.
Yeah. But I would think that she'd reconnect with her family. You wouldn't want to put your family, no matter how bad he was and how powerful his family was, I don't think you'd want to put your family through that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
maybe I'm just too hopeful.
And it's interesting in seeing those clips with him. He's like talking about her being gone and saying, well, she wouldn't have left medical school. Like, she loved that. Like, she clearly disappeared, somehow. So it just seems very, very odd, because in those moments he seems almost human and concerned for her. Like we saw earlier, that he carries around all these photos, like of his family and of Kathy and stuff, like which seems strange if you've killed her or had something to do with her missing, but at the same time that kind of humanizes him to a certain extent.
Yeah.
So
he's a very interesting character.
It is all very
It's one of those characters, because we watch a lot of TV here, we cover movies and stuff, and it's one of those characters that I don't know that someone could write a character to do this. No. It's because it's real life. I mean, I'm sure someone could, but it's very true.
Yeah, he's the guy that people make screenplays and movies about.
Yeah,
these kind of monsters, and he's. I mean, we don't know really what happened, but I feel like he is the monster they're painting him to be, essentially. And
it's so interesting to see what happened too, which is great that we'll be able to talk about this over the next few weeks and see how everything plays out as well.
Yeah, exactly. I know do we have anything else we want to dive into? I mean, we've got a few more minutes here.
I don't know. What else?
I did think it was very sad, the part about him forcing Kathy to have an abortion. And from like her journal entries or whatever, it sounds like that was something they very clearly talked about, that they weren't going to have kids and she was okay with it, and that if she got pregnant, that she'd have an abortion. So it seemed like that was very clear from both parties, but then she got pregnant and the journal entries like, I didn't realize what the reality of that situation would be like, and that's not what I want to do anymore. And he made her go through with it. And in the interviews with him, he says, you know, that's when I noticed the Kathy that I used to know start changing. You know, she no longer like would do everything I said, and she wanted to like be her own person, essentially.
I can't believe I'm actually going to defend the guy for a minute, but I'm going to. Because if the agreement was to not have kids and that happened, I mean, from what he said in this, which could be lies, you never know what's truth and what's lies in this. He pretty much said, if you want to have the baby, we're going to get divorced.
Yeah.
He wasn't, it wasn't like he sat her down and like punched her stomach and made her have an abortion. You know what I mean? Not to be crazy, but it wasn't like that.
Yeah.
He gave her a choice, and therefore he still didn't want, like, it's not, yes, he forced her in a way. He forced her to make a decision, and she chose him. So, in choosing him, she had to have an abortion. Yeah. But I don't know.
And I actually kind of agree with you on that, because from her journal entries and from what he said, it seems like that was a very clear thing between the two of them. And that's where, you know, everyone watching, where the, you know, title The Jinx kind of comes from. He says he felt like he'd be a jinx to his kids. If he had kids, they'd get messed up, essentially. You know, he'd jinx them. And so I get that. If that was something that was very clear, you know, he said, if you want to have the baby, go ahead, but we're going to divorce. If you don't, you know, if you want to stay with me, then you have to get an abortion. And that would be such a hard, I can't even like imagine what having to be put in that situation and make that sort of decision. But you're right. Like if she did wanted the kid more than him, she could have. That seemed like an option. Yeah,
and I feel like with the title The Jinx, how he was saying, you know, he thought he would be a jinx if he had kids. Is it the ultimate jinx of making this movie, and now they're gonna find enough evidence, and you know he's gonna get the death penalty? I mean, it's possible.
Who knows?
Whoa.
Yeah, insane. So,
and then the same says part of me wants to give this guy a hug. I don't know why.
And we'll see it later, but that is like when we see the footage from the trial in Galveston. Oh, it's so interesting. I have so many thoughts about it, but yeah, it's very interesting how I think the filmmakers have done this, because they've done a great job of showing like all the evidence and truths behind what happened, but then also showing sides from the interviews with Durst that are humanizing and don't make him seem like he necessarily is the guy that all these things have happened around.
Yeah, you know? I mean, it's a true documentary style. I feel like a lot of people try to do documentaries and it turns into docu-reality or reality show type situation, and I feel like this is very well done. Yeah. And it reports from a place of the middle. So at points, and I feel myself, at points I think one way, and then at points I think the other way, and then I talk myself back into, which I feel like is what shows like this are supposed to do. It opens your brain to think of the possibilities that you don't know. So I think they're doing an amazing job on this documentary.
I completely agree.
Yeah,
completely agree. I think it's great. I mean, I'll let you know, I watched all of them because I couldn't stop. But I think they did an excellent job. So I'm excited to talk about next week's episodes too. So I think that brings us to the end of it. I don't really think we have any predictions for this type of show, because we kind of, I mean, it's a real thing that's going on. I'm very curious to see how everything's going to play out in the news, because he's got a court hearing tomorrow.
Yes,
I believe so. So everyone, stay tuned. Read your news about this. It's very interesting stuff. Watch All Good Things by the fictional movie by Jarecki. You know, let us know what you think too on Twitter. We wanna hear from you. And like I said in the beginning, make sure you guys are subscribed to us on YouTube, youtube.com/AFTERBUZZ TV. Tune in next week. We want to hear what you guys think of the show. Tweet us. I'm Lauren Salaun. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, everywhere, you name it, at Lauren Salaun. That's Salaun. Steph?
And you guys can find me on Instagram, Twitter at IAMSTEFZ. Also, if you guys want to hashtag tweet us at ABTV the Jinx, that way we can keep the conversation going.
Actually, that's just ABTV Jinx.
Oh, not the. Sorry,
Psych.
Jinx. ABTV Jinx. We'd love to keep the conversation going. I'm sure we've missed things that you guys want to talk about.
Yeah.
So let us know. We'll respond to you. And until next week, I guess.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks for watching.
Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff. We would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.